And we know that the Houston Texans have won the AFC South the last 2 seasons. Can they do it again this year? Well, let's take a trip around the AFC South as our insiders give their biggest question for each team in the division heading into training camp.
I'm Jake Query in Indianapolis. The biggest question for the Colts undoubtedly is very simple, and that is the health of Andrew Luck. He, of course, had surgery in the offseason. That news was released by Jim Irsay very shortly after the season concluded in 2016 to repair his shoulder. Now, the key issue here is the timing. We knew that he had what's known as subluxation in his shoulder during the course of the 2016 season. And Andrew Luck was nursing his way through that and still playing through pain throughout the course of last year. But there was no question that the velocity on his passes was not where it had previously been. And you have to wonder what that means for the timing of Andrew Luck. Now, typically with a veteran quarterback, you would say that timing, things like that, wouldn't be a huge issue, and perhaps he could get up to speed fairly quickly when training camp resumes. But the question mark is simply, when is he going to be able to throw? The Colts have been very vague on this. They continue to say that they're not worried about it, that they expect that he's on schedule. But when you have, as the Colts do, a continuation, in particular at the tight end situation, where you have guys, Dwayne Allen, for example, no longer there. So there are going to be new faces that they're going to continue to try to work in terms of the receivers for Andrew Luck. So timing will be very important. As of right now, there's no reason to believe the Colts are being disingenuous with the timetable. And as a result of that, it would be expected that Andrew Luck will be throwing into training camp and ready for week 1. But there is absolutely zero question that and the timetable of it and keeping an eye on it is the biggest question mark for the Colts heading into the 2017-2018 season.
Adam Wexler here with KPRC TV in Houston. As the Texans enter training camp, the same focus it's always been under head coach Bill O'Brien, is a new starting quarterback. It'll be the 4th consecutive season they've opened a year with a new signal caller. It will be Tom Savage, or it will be Deshaun Watson, the rookie they moved up to draft with the 12th pick in the draft. During the entire offseason program, Tom Savage has been the starter. There's been no competition. That remains to be seen if a competition will develop.
Hey, I'm Brett Bryan, game day host of Titans Radio, and the biggest question heading into Titans training camp is the health of quarterback Marcus Mariota. He broke his right fibula on Christmas Eve of 2016 in Jacksonville against the Jaguars. He was in a boot for 2 months, but he surprisingly was in charge of a lot of the OTAs and mini camps without doing a lot of the heavy lifting. The last thing remaining to see is the strength of the right leg in its rehab process. He needs to run full speed. That's the last thing we need to see as training camp opens on July 29th here in Nashville, Tennessee.
I'm Brett Martineau, sports director at WJAX and WFOX in Jacksonville, Florida. And the Jaguars' biggest question in 2017 is probably the easiest one to point out amongst all 32 teams. It has to be quarterback Blake Bortles. He is playing for his career here in Jacksonville, his 4th year here in the River City. He was pretty decent the first couple of seasons, threw up some good numbers, but last year was a disaster. He has to stop being a turnover machine. He went to California, worked on his craft, worked on his game in the offseason. How many dividends will that pay for the Jacksonville Jaguars here in the fall? We are about to find out. A huge year for Blake Bortles. If the Jaguars want to do anything in the AFC South, they have to have their quarterback play winning football. He has yet to do that in his career.
We welcome in the co-host of Follow the Money on VSiN, Mitch Moss. And Mitch, let's talk about the AFC South because it looks like it's kind of wide open. I wonder if that'll change once we know the health of the 2 stud quarterbacks in that division, Andrew Luck and Marcus Mariota. Do you think the money will change once we find out how healthy those 2 guys are?
I'm sure it will because the Texans quarterback position is still up in the air, obviously. We don't know if it's going to be Watson or Savage there. And it's, with both of these guys coming back from injuries and Luck still kind of a little bit banged up and we don't know what the leg's going to be like with Mariota. I think that once we see the first couple of weeks how those 2 guys are playing and if they're close to 100% and they're really effective, then I think that they will probably emerge as the leaders in that division. And plus, as you guys know, Andrew Luck is respected across the country. I mean, from everybody so highly and also here in Las Vegas, that if he looks like he's 100% and going to be sharp, then yes, then obviously the odds makers here will adjust that to the Colts as well.
Mitch, you mentioned there in Houston, we've got the rookie in Deshaun Watson, Tom Savage as the incumbent coming back. Who do you think is going to get that nod and how much will the numbers change once they decide on a quarterback?
Well, in my opinion, I think that we kind of know the ceiling of the Texans with a quarterback like Savage as the guy. We saw it kind of last year. They can maybe make the playoffs because they have other guys around him, and the defense is going to be potentially so special. I don't think they can really win more than a game in the playoffs. With Watson, my opinion is, why can't he be Dak Prescott from last year? And it's going to come down to training camp, obviously. And in my head, I like the idea of Watson getting the nod, but he's going to have to beat out Savage. And if he does, I personally think the ceiling for the Texans is a lot higher with a rookie quarterback than what we know they're going to get with Tom Savage as the guy.
Wow. Mitch, when you look at the Jaguars, I know it's been a mess the last couple of years there. Is that a good long shot to put some money down on the Jags, maybe to surprise in this division?
Well, they are 5-1, so they are by far and away, they have the best value, I guess, if you will, to win the division. And it all comes down to the theme of this division is the quarterback play, obviously. I mean, Blake Bortles, when you go back to late last year, there was a stat where he had more pick sixes than first quarter touchdowns in his career. So they have surrounded him with a borderline terrific defense on paper anyway. The offensive line is going to be improved. They get Fournette in the draft. So they have the weapons, and it comes down to whether or not he can actually make a jump this year. If he can, and everybody else plays as well as they can on paper, then I say yes, they would be a long shot to win this division, and it might not be bad value at all.
All right, sometimes people love to put some money down on a long shot. Mitch Moss, great information as always. We appreciate the time, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
For more expert gambling analysis around the NFL and more, go to VSiN.com, where some of the sharpest minds in Vegas discuss all the lines for the news you need to win.